Okay. Welcome to For the Love of Literacy, Lenora. How are you doing today?
I am great, Katie. Thank you so much for having me. How are you today?
I'm also doing good. Like as we're winding down summer, basically school's starting, at least for my kids. Are you like I'm gonna have you introduce yourself and I'm gonna ask you like what work looks like for you now versus other points in the year. If it's
Okay.
busier now. Okay. So go
All
ahead and introduce yourself first.
right. My name is Lenora Edwards, and I am the Chief Knowledge Officer with Better Speech. And I've been a board certified speech language pathologist for a number of years since 2009. So I've
Wow,
done
yeah,
lots of different things in the field.
that's for sure. And where did you graduate? Because you're in Pennsylvania, right?
I am in Pennsylvania. I actually, so with the speech language pathology programs, there's either 5-year programs or you can take the long route. Like myself, I started out in nursing and I did my undergraduate at ED Stroudsburg and then I did my graduate at Marywood University. So
Mm.
I did all 6 years.
You have put in the work. Yeah, holy cow. That's awesome. I mean, I didn't mean to, but I actually ended up, I went to BYU and I stayed in college a little longer than anticipated because I changed majors.
For
You know how
sure.
that goes. I
Yep.
started out in print journalism and writing, which I still do, which is so ironic. But I switched end of my sophomore year to teaching elementary education. I did actually use that and taught in Salt Lake for 5 years. And it
Very
was an
cool.
absolute blast. It was crazy. And then took time off to start our family. So
Very awesome.
I've actually been in Utah for a while too, even though I'm from back east. I've been in and out and around the area quite a bit. So I know how that goes. That's fascinating though. So yeah, you know what? I think that that extra year or more that people have of school is not a bad thing. Maybe it takes a little longer to start working on your dream, but I think that it actually ends up benefiting you. My brother's kind of in those throes right now as he's wrapping up in college. And I just think, you'll look back and be like, I'm actually grateful for that extra year because it gave me the confidence I needed or the direction or whatever. So
Yeah, yeah. I was really glad that I ended up. I did actually graduate in time. What I would say would be hindsight would definitely be the financial aspect of saying, you know what, I wish I kind of did my GEs at a community college and made that decision. But I definitely, I
yeah,
really enjoyed switching from one university to the other because I think that also, whether you get an extra year, you get a different environment, they really help you grow and they really
right.
encourage you to build your skills and not just, your knowledge base, but really to come out of your shell more and to be in a different environment more. And that's a great thing.
That's true. That's true. Because I mean, I could have done a community college route as well. I could have even done a smaller college and then
Mm.
transferred. But there's just that, yeah, like making yourself a little bit uncomfortable, that
Yeah.
growth zone, more so to speak. And I agree with that. I can't agree with that more.
Hmm.
So let's jump right in here. Again, like I mentioned to you before we started recording, I have interviewed other SLPs on the show, but it's at least been a year, which means it was a different season, a different time. I've done different seasons because of the births of my babies, basically. It's like
Aww,
we're on season 3 and baby 3, who's now 2,
that's brilliant.
Anyway,
Aw,
yes, because I have learned that I can't do it all, just being honest. But I really
I
love
love your
this time and being
honesty.
able to and being able to connect with people like you. I think this episode is going to be a really a good resource for people, especially as they're looking for what to expect with speech, maybe what specifically you do a better speech. You might start there, but I think that there's all kinds of good things that can come from this today. So,
Definitely.
yes, working for better speech. What does that look like? Maybe a typical work day for you, and then you can tell me what parents, mentors, educators can expect also.
I love that. Just a quick side note back to learning, especially as a woman, learning that you cannot do it all. I I fully support and understand that very deeply. And I realized if we were meant to do it all, we would be here alone. So I really have come to the surrender of saying, you know what? Knowing who to turn to really makes a massive, massive difference, and who is
Absolutely.
there for support and then who is not so much there for support. And being able to tap into those channels that are the supportive ones, especially as women, I think that's something very important to me at least. um, a typical day at Better Speech. So all the work that I do is actually exclusively online. So all of my clients are all via Zoom, and I love it. I first started when I very first started back at the very early days of COVID, I was very nervous because being an online clinician, it was something that was totally new for me. And I was a bit worried of how would I hear the kids producing certain sounds. I wanted to be able to better direct them, especially because when we're an in person clinician, we're very tactile, we're very involved. It's really easy to show them your face and how
Right.
you can be so expressive and what they need to do with their tongue. So there was a bit of a learning curve, but one thing that I loved was being able to turn to YouTube and look at other clinicians that were providing online therapy and what their resources were and how they found things helpful. And the more I saw that, the more thought, oh, I could definitely do this. This is going to be great. And as I started to navigate into better speech and into the online speech therapy world, it's just gotten better and better and better for me. And the things that have come out have been phenomenal, such as how to keep kids engaged. A lot of the time, parents will ask me, well, do you just talk to them? What do you do? What does therapy look like? And we share the screen, we give remote control, we have a variety of
Uh,
websites out there, especially on the Better Speech platform. We actually have interactive games. So they get to play and we get to be as engaging. The only main difference would be I don't get to give them a huge high five, but I'll bring my hand to the screen. I'll be like, "Oh, give me a high five." So there is still that element of engagement and being fun and interactive, and that's something really, really important to me.
yeah, that's crucial. And I mean, honestly, none of us were really anticipating the storm that was COVID and that changed everything. But online learning in general has become, I don't want to say more accepted, but in a way, I mean, I know several schools that do hybrid, like my sister's kids,
Yeah.
they go to a STEM school. And so they go twice a week and then they're home and doing stuff on the computer the other 3 days of the week. I love that. I wish I had that option. I don't even know of any schools in the area that do that. The closest thing to kind of having a little more um, say so versus the public education system would be like the charter schools here. But again, it's still like the Monday to Friday grind.
Mhm.
And I've toyed with the thought of homeschooling as well, being that I used to teach school
Yeah.
and that I know when my kids go into a classroom of 22 to 30 students, they're just not going to get the prime time that sometimes they need. My older one, he really thrives and does well with school. He knows how to behave, but also challenge himself because he's like really sharp in math and engineering. But my middle just started kindergarten this year. And with her, it's a little more intentional. It's a little more like, I actually chose to do half day with her. She, when I was just taking lunch before we started
Oh,
because the state moved to full day. However, we had the option to choose half day. So we just come and pick them up. But it's so funny. There are 22 kids getting picked up, but they didn't put them all in the same class. There's 6 kindergarten classes, and there are 22 kids who get picked up for half day. Now, the nice thing is with our current situation, we have set it up so that we can extend to full day if she's starting to love it, feel in charge, feel confident, want to do more of the play based stuff. But when I pick her up every day at noon, she is exhausted, like she is overwhelmed.
mhm.
And that's just her, right? That's her emotions, that's her where she's at.
Yeah.
And we started occupational therapy a couple weeks ago, which was a new world to me. We weren't sure about speech. And this will actually be kind of a fun tangent. You can tell me more about this, but
Mhm.
I didn't know that there are certain sounds children can acquire each year of their lives. So, for example, obviously, my toddler, I'm giving her tons of grace. I'm not expecting much from her. But my almost 6-year-old, I'm like, she's still dropping the R. Is that normal? Oh, she doesn't really do the TH. She does the F sound instead of TH.
Mhm.
And those are the only two. Supposedly, you're supposed to have 3 or 4 issues to qualify for speech, at least at the school, and at OT as well, because they do speech and occupational therapy. But the reason I had even brought it up is because sometimes when her emotions are really big and she's frustrated because I or someone else does not understand what she's trying to say. Um, I mean, it's easy with words like girl, but she'll say Goyle. She actually sounds like she's from New Jersey. Goyle, or my favorite. Um, and if the R is at the beginning of a word, it's more like a W sound.
Mhm.
But if the R is in the middle of a word, it just gets dropped. And so sometimes I'm trying to think, but there are times that I'm like, what is she talking about? But I don't want to
Yeah,
like say it like that because I know that will really create tension for her. So anyway, it's been interesting seeing that. I don't know if you've kind of seen that with some of your clients and students, but um, I think that's the beauty actually of speech therapy is like, hey, there's a solution. It's not always going to be like this, you know. And they told me she
definitely.
would get this in her 7th year. So I guess if we're still struggling with this in a year, then I need to be like referring her or something like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. So, especially when it comes to the R sound, it's really interesting. We have one letter and over 30 combinations in the English language of how we say this.
That's wild.
So,
Yeah.
it really is. So, we have R at the beginning part of the word. And yes, red, rabbit. Those are the ones that people usually pick up.
Mhm.
Then, for a word such as her, technically that's at the end of the word, but it's also an ER combination, or girl. It's in the middle part of the word, still an combination.
Yep.
So, really being able to pay attention to where the sound is. So, think like the word park, an AR combination, but it's in the middle part of the word. So, sometimes they'll have it, sometimes
Right.
they won't. And then we
Or
get the
party.
R.
When she says party, I think she's saying potty almost every
Mhm.
time. And she's talking about using
Yeah.
the potty, not planning a party.
Hmm.
So, and that's the AR one. Yeah, you're right. It's crazy how many different combinations there. I didn't even
There
think about that.
There are a ton, and especially what I do absolutely try to do is when I'm with children and when we're working on the sound, I try lots of different approaches to see which one they're closest to. So what that looks like is R at the beginning part of the word. It might sound like one, but if I ask them to do a GR sound, as in gray or grab, they might have that because it's already a G sound. It's already in the
Mm,
with their voice and it's at the back of the mouth. So R is actually made with your tongue going up high and tight. And we often say, oh, bring your tongue up or bring it back. And when we say bring it back, we know what we're talking about, but we have to really clarify it for children. They'll start to flip their tongue up, kind of like a mermaid tail, and they'll
uh-huh.
try to swallow their tongue, and it'll go more like "girl" versus
Oh, okay.
So really
Yeah.
helping them understand what their tongue is doing, and a lot of the time, even if I'm on with my clients on Zoom, I have a mouth that I'll show them, or I'll do hand gestures, but also I'll get the flashlight and I'm showing them inside my mouth what's going
Uh,
on because to really when we make the sound, our teeth are closed. You can't see the sound. It's not like a P, it's not like a
right.
B, it's not like the letter M. Those are right on your mouth, right on your face, which is why they're often
Right.
the earliest developing sounds. So I show them what's going on and then I encourage them to not only shift their screen so that they make me tiny, but that they can make themselves bigger and see what else they're doing. And then I'll encourage the parent or the guardian, okay, so your homework is, and get in the bathroom, go to the mirror, play in there. Even if you're eating graham crackers, the nice thing about graham crackers is after you swallow the first bite, a lot of the time there's residue behind your molars.
Mhm.
And I encourage them to really, even with a peanut butter sandwich, if they're not allergic to peanuts, pump their tongue so that their tongue is scraping the back of their molars. Because what they're going to do is they're going to start to notice where their tongue needs to be going. So we really practice a lot with raising their awareness.
Yes. And I actually had a question about that. Like, are you, in essence, with helping kids with better speech or helping clients too, are you helping them learn to read sometimes? Because you've got the phonics, you've got the sounds. Those are
Mhm.
really key components when we're talking about learning to read.
Absolutely. And I love that you pointed that out. We absolutely help them to read because not only are we giving them the picture, we also have the word written out underneath. And we're also explaining some of the rules and of the English language that go along with that and helping them understand the difference between the a and the e and the I, along with understanding where the R sound is in this case that we were talking about it. What are the other sounds doing in the sentence? And even comparing and contrasting. Okay, this word is how we say it this way. This looks really similar, like we're going to say it quite this way, but we don't. This is, a reason why on here and helping them really then build the sentence. How would we use this in a sentence so that they're understanding and really able to integrate that word into their vocabulary because it's not just the sound, it's also the word.
Right. And that's even indicative of what she's worked through. So we did Waterford. It's like an online, I don't know if it's just a new, I don't know where it is, but an online kind of schooling system to help kids with basic math, counting skills, and
Cool.
learning to read, but not really learning the skills, right? The baby steps to read. So
Mhm.
they did an assessment online. She just did it here at home in May or June. And when I printed it out, I was looking at her levels on everything. And I was shocked because she's very sharp. Her vocabulary is very developed. She loves to read it. Well, she loves to be read too. I love
Mhm.
reading with her, but she always loves to look at books, but especially I Spy because she doesn't need my help to say, oh, okay, it says find two of these and three of these. But we're getting there, right? But what I've noticed is that it had her ranked pre-kindergarten, so like preschool, on letter sounds and blending. And blending is another one of those where we're struggling with
Yeah.
the and the R sound where it's blended with other letters. I'm seeing that very clearly. But when I was able to look through the results, it was just like a little bit more of a like pinpointing it for me so that I
Mhm.
knew what things to work on with her. And she adds a little fun challenge to things because she does not like to do anything that feels like work. She's a very sassy, independent 5-year-old. And so what we'll do is gamify a lot of things. So
I
just this
love
last
that.
week, I made like I just all the alphabet beginning sounds, but there's a picture to represent it. Then I have magnetic letters, the letters of the alphabet, and we put those pictures on magnet tiles. So then she would take the magnet letter and stick it on the magnet tile that matched the picture. But I made her make the sound every time. I was like, tell me what this is a picture of, and I tried to make it really clear, but she loves food. So I made a lot of it like I for ice cream, but I was like, and sometimes it can be igloo and that sound,
Mhm.
but or H for hamburger. And anyway, we did a lot of food, P for pizza, but I was able to kind of notice again those letters that we're still struggling with, and one letter that she constantly, consistently getting confused about, which is the letter G. So we were talking about goat, and she knows that word goat, but she didn't
Mhm.
realize that g goes with goat, and that's the sound. And so even though we were playing a game, I was kind of doing this work with her.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a little bit of extra work. I'm not saying parents need to go do this. I am just saying because, again, she didn't qualify for speech this year, but I want her to feel more confident in expressing herself and feeling like she actually does know the things because she's kind of on the older end of kindergartners. So
Yeah.
we were hoping that would help boost her confidence too. But so
I
crazy how
love that.
the sounds and the blending are such a key component of her starting to learn to read.
I love that, and I want to talk on 2 points that you brought up beautifully. Very specifically, and it does depend on the state when it comes to speech therapy services that are provided through the school, and it's something to be aware of. Typically, let's say they had an assessment and their standard deviation is between 85 and 115 and they scored somewhere near 84. They might be still considered in needing therapy, good enough but not qualified for speech therapy services within the school because what's happening, and it's very unfortunate that it's happening, but this is kind of a behind the scenes situation that's happening, is schools are able to provide therapy services for the kids that need it the most. So if you're not in that 80 range or if you're not in that 75 range, that child doesn't get those therapy services simply because they're too good in scale of what other things are needed. And, a lot of the times I encourage parents to keep exploring other options. And they'll
Mhm.
say, the school should be able to provide it. Yes, the school should be able to provide it. But unfortunately, that clinician can only take so many students legally. And they'll say, okay, well, then they need to hire another clinician. True, but they might not be able to afford another clinician because
Right,
the school might not be able to have the budget for it. Or even worse situations, as in there's nobody available. They're looking. They've been looking
right,
for a year and they cannot get a clinician in that school to work. And that is a very heartbreaking, unfortunate actual reality.
right.
And The nice thing, what I love so much about Better Speech is that if Better Speech does actually provide online speech therapy services to schools, which is a great thing, but also the fact that people are in their home. I love being able to record
Right.
our speech therapy sessions so that the parent or the guardian that happens to be home is available to be there with them. We record it. Then other parent guardian gets to be able to watch the therapy session,
Mm,
or grandparent or babysitter. Here's
that's
what's being worked on in speech therapy. Here are the strategies. Here's what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and how you can implement it at home. It really helps build that continuity of care and that follow through. And I think that is such a beautiful thing, because when that child knows that they are seen and supported and
right.
being helped, that everybody's on the bandwagon helping them, they really do make faster gains. And to your lovely point about helping your child, I love that you were making it a game and gamifying it is such a great
Mm,
thing. I absolutely encourage people. And at the end of my session, I'll even ask the child that I'm working with, what was challenging for you today? What were you most proud of? What do you think you did really great on? What's something you want to improve upon? And depending on the age, they'll be able to help with this, or I'll even support them in saying, if they say, I don't know, I say, "Oh, well, I'm so glad that you did your best listening and you had your listening ears on." What I often encourage people to do is, and this is a great thing to spend time bonding with your child. Sometimes people will read at night and they'll read a bedtime story. I encourage people to also talk about the things that are challenging and let that child say, "This was hard for me."
mm,
And that's okay. And yeah, riding a bicycle without training wheels, that's hard. But you tried. And I'm so proud that you tried, and helping them raise their awareness that things are challenging
right.
and it's okay. It's great that we're not perfect at it. And there was even one that had said, I heard it on a podcast, and I believe it was the woman who invented Spanx.
Oh,
And her father would ask her at the dinner table, "What did you fail at today?" And
oh, I heard this. Yeah.
being really excited, and he wanted to know what they were struggling with. What did they fail at? And if they didn't have something that they were failing at, he was quite literally disappointed, indicating to them that it's a good thing to fail. It builds resiliency, and it's a good thing to know where you're not as strong as you want to be so that you can get better. And I thought that was such a beautiful reframe on the word fail. Because
Yeah.
especially, I grew up with A, B, C's, D's, and F's. Those were my grading system. I didn't have this other grading system.
Hmm.
So I had a less than positive connection to the word fail. When we start to reframe it for our kids and we say, it's okay. You don't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. Look at me. I'm struggling with this. This is really challenging for me. What was challenging for you in your day? And helping them see that even as an adult, we're not perfect. And even though we might look like it because we don't necessarily spill food on our pants all the time, because when we're feeding ourselves, we usually have that skill mastered, it's okay. They're getting there. They're getting stronger. And that's something I encourage so many people to talk about with their children, and to help build that connection also, because then you're spending time with them and you're asking their thoughts and building off of that.
Yeah, and that is a really beautiful reciprocal kind of relationship that I think is really important, because it's very easy to get frustrated when you're learning to do something, for adults alike, not just kids. But one thing I think that you pointed out that I wanted to touch on was that resiliency, because being willing to try again and to practice and to keep failing, that is going to make all the difference at the end of the day. Um, and I remember hearing that either on a podcast or somewhere about the
Mhm.
Spanx, that whole thing, her conversation with her dad at the table. But I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, that is so interesting, because I don't really recall ever having an adult talk to me like that,
Mhm.
um, as I was growing up, and of course, and clearly continuing to make mistakes. So I wondered, like, how do you encourage without discouraging? It's kind of a fine line. Because when I used to teach fourth grade, I learned very quickly, because I taught both in Title I schools and in an arts endorsed school, and they were very different in the same, not same school district, but basically same, generic location. And I learned not to take anything for granted. When my third year teaching, I had a sweet little boy. So fourth grade is typically 9 and 10-year-old, who was dyslexic and whose other teachers either didn't assess him, let him slip through the cracks. I don't know what happened, but any teacher receiving a student in fourth grade without like any indication that that's the case is like, yeah, what happened? And they had moved also, but that still didn't mean like that teacher
Mm.
before shouldn't have sent something along, because I think it took I don't think he started the school year. And then when he came, it took me a couple weeks to realize that there was a reason why he was refusing to read in class. And it wasn't like he wasn't being defiant. He wasn't, I mean, it looked like he was embarrassed and uncomfortable, but I have heard of students making it to high school and people not realizing they can't read. And like,
Mm.
that's just to me, I mean, we're not going to go off on that whole tangent because we are focusing a little more on that speech and mindful communication today.
Mm.
But I was shocked and then took a lot of steps because I was actually on my school's behavior and what was the other one? Behavior and academic are separate committees. And I think we were always asked to help serve on different, versions or whatever. But
Mhm.
that aside, I just think there are all kinds of exceptions out there in whatever role, with
Mhm.
for you. Like, I'm sure it's not just like clear cut all the time, especially
Mhm.
since you're having to meet your clients virtually and then you're working with them online and then all kinds of things, right? You're not seeing all the outside factors and
Yeah.
influences every day. You don't know if you're hoping, but you don't know if the parents are practicing with them. And so there's all kinds
Mhm.
of things that I would always not know, like if my students were really reading at home, because even though I had a reading log, I didn't know if
For
they were
sure.
actually reading at home
Mhm.
because it's just kind of like a Scouts honor thing.
Yeah.
But when parents would be like, I haven't heard my kid read all year, is that bad? I'm like, well, they're in fourth grade. They're probably reading chapter books, some graphic novels. So that's not bad. But I would give them passages from time to time, nonfiction passages, because those tend to be trickier, and especially for comprehension. And I'd say
Mhm.
just set a 1 minute timer and see. They can be while you're making dinner. Just listen to your kid read. Listen to your kid
Yeah.
read.
It's a great
And
one.
even though it's busy now with my own brood, I still make time for my second grader to sit and just listen to him, or if I'm making something, to have him right there, so that if he needs me for a word or to help sound something out, I'm there, but so that he knows it's important and that I expect him to keep reading. Anyway, all that to say, I'm sure that makes things tricky sometimes with speech. And maybe we can talk a little more too about what parents and guardians can do. You mentioned the videotaping thing, which is really cool. I love
Mhm.
that feature. Are there other things that parents or mentors can do after the kiddos or the clients have come and worked with you?
Definitely. And I love that you really noted that you make time to do it, even if it's 1 minute. It really is
Mhm.
important and it really does matter. Even if the child is not wanting to do it, still finding ways to say it's okay. And you had mentioned another question, how do we navigate tough situations? How do we encourage kids to do certain things? And have difficult conversations of, I noticed you're having some difficulty reading. What's going on? The best thing to do is always watch your tone.
Mm.
When you can come across, especially as, and I'm just imagining you as the teacher realizing that this child is having difficulty, you're probably pretty angry at the other teachers and at whomever else, wherever else it was. But you could have easily gone up to the kid and gone, "What's going on? Why can't you read? What's happening here?" Just out of
Mhm.
sheer aggravation from being not mean to him, but being aggravated for him,
The
although
situation,
coming across as being mean to him. And
right?
it's really important to then notice your emotions. And this is something that I encourage many people to do is especially, and I love the quote by Maya Angelou, who always said, it's not what you said, or people will never may not remember what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And I very, very much
Mm.
resonate with that. So, in noticing that, allow yourself to really, as the adult, pause. This is a great way to be mindful also. Notice the emotions that you're experiencing. You might be frustrated because you're juggling between dinner. You're trying to get dinner on the table on time and not burn yourself because the flame is on and listen to your child read at the same time. There's a lot going on. And if something is your child's asking you something or somebody is coming up to you and you're like, "What do you want?" Notice your emotions and before you open your mouth, pause. You can choose to pause. How do I want to respond to this person that's coming up to me right now? I know I'm frustrated. Do I want to take my frustration out on that person? Rather
Right.
than going, "What do you want right now?" You can go, pause. I'm going to notice, what can I help you with? And just soften. What
Hmm.
would you like right now? In the difference, even if I said, "What do you want right now?" Notice the tone.
Right.
What do you want right now? Slow it down. And the best thing to do is, especially in those moments, if you're thinking, "I don't have all the time in the world, Lenora," to pause, allow yourself to soften your voice. You will naturally help your body calm down out of the elevated state you're probably in, the heightened level of emotion that you're in. When you soften your voice and even go down to a whisper, "What would you like? What can I help you with? What are we working on?" It will automatically help you shift your tone. It'll help you shift your mood. And you won't have that snap response to somebody who probably didn't deserve it at the time
Right.
or was just coming to ask a question. Even in those moments when you're having tough conversations of, "Okay, I've said this word about 45,000 times to my child and they have yet to get it," allow yourself to soften. They're not going to remember that moment when they couldn't say the word grab. They will remember not enjoying homework. And that's the big takeaway is that you want them to find ways to have positive experience. It doesn't have to always be rainbows and sunshine, but
Hmm.
notice your tone and really notice the impact of your tone. Are we shaming children or are we working our best to support them and to encourage them? And it comes down to the tone of voice that you're using.
Oh, that's huge. No, I know that because I'm the reactionary type. And so my friend Nina is a yoga and like a mindfulness wellness,
Oh,
expert. And she calls it taking a beat. And it's just literally like that minute when you're just feeling everything and you want to explode. It may have nothing to do with the child talking to you or your husband.
mm,
He's been at the brunt of some of my explosions also sometimes. It's just like taking a minute.
yeah.
Because I think often when we hear the word mindful or even think about mindful communication, we think we need to sit and meditate. You don't have time to do that sometimes. You just don't. You're in the middle of
No.
dinner prep, people are leaving for sports. Um, and a case like today, I have a youth group coming over. We have that activity, got to get my son to karate before that. And, just all the things. And one little thing, whether it's my toddler having an accident when we've been potty training or big sister, what was it? Yes. Oh, she got guacamole in the new carpet. We have waited over almost 2 years to finish our basement and ground guacamole into the carpet. And I was like, well, I stopped. I was like, sweetheart, this is why I've asked you to eat in the kitchen. Cause
Mhm.
then if this spills, it's a lot easier to clean up in the kitchen. Now I'm gonna have to clean the carpet. And then the way that I handled it though, made her say, oh, I'm sorry, mom. Can I help you clean? Can I help you scrub it?
Huge
Versus if
difference.
I had erupted at her, she probably would have been like, well, I've seen two reactions. One, she'll start crying, or she'll get mad, defiant, and
Mhm.
say, you clean it. Or mommy spoke sharply to me. She'll say that to
Mhm.
my husband or something.
Mhm.
Sometimes her perceptions obviously are a little that bit also dependent on her current emotion.
For
But
sure. All of ours are.
aside, I love like it was funny, even when you were doing it, like just simulating, like your tone was very calming and relaxing. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's so powerful. Yeah, I can totally switch that. And I do, of course, um, I don't want to say that I want make this true, but many times you've heard that if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Mhm.
And I don't want that to be the theme or the underlying sense or
Sure.
emotion in our home, of course. So,
Yeah.
especially when it's not true, of course,
Hmm.
that too. But
Absolutely.
maybe with just wrapping up here, the mindful communication is just so important, but that practicing and that consistent, commitment from your clients and their family members. Just like this is just kind of curiosity. How long do you usually work with a client, and what kind of changes do you like to see before you're like you've graduated? Your work is done here or whatever.
It really depends on the individual. So there are times where I will work with a client and I might see them for 3 months and they did great. Their R was super close. And what we did is we went in and we fine tuned it and they picked it up, they ran with it and they got it. And then there are times where I work with a client for over a year. And it really just depends on where that individual is. Especially, there's a big difference between articulation goals, which
Mhm.
is very specifically speech intelligibility. How sharp are their sounds? How clear are they? Versus language goals. How is their sentence structure? Can they follow 2, 3, 4 step commands? Can they have a back and forth? Are they switching their pronouns? Are they switching their verbs? Do they understand adjectives and where they go? How's their sentence structure? So it really just depends on the individual. And, something that you had mentioned about mindfulness and something that I often think is, yes, we can visualize our day and how we want to go about it and navigate through that, but also how do I want to interact? What do I want people to remember me for? Do I want to have I want people to have a good memory experience of working with me. Now this could be with my clients or somebody that I see in the grocery store. Something that I often do in the grocery store and when I go out to eat, before I ask them to do anything, even at checkout, "Hi, how are you? How's your day?" Making eye contact, letting people see that they're a person before they're anything else in this world.
Mm,
They're not the
mhm.
cashier, they're not the waiter, they're not the hostess. They're a person
Right.
first. And they're not there to do a job at that moment. They're there so that I can interact with them. And I want them to realize that they are important. And then we can proceed with the next step. So even when I see the little ones, they say, "How are you? What was the best thing that happened to you?" I don't jump right in and go, "Okay, let's practice our buh sound." I want them to really understand that this is a greeting, this is an interaction, this is very, very, very important. And in our very technologically advanced world that's becoming more and more advanced and getting less and less human at times, it's very important that we give our children and we share these techniques and we share how to communicate with other people. I encourage kids and parents all the time. Your kid is 7 years old, great. Encourage them to go up to the cashier or go up to the attendant at the grocery store. You're there, you're supervising. Allow them to go up and interact. "Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, ma'am. Can you tell me where the cereal is?" Even if they know. I grew up in the 90s. I had to call for my pizza. I had to go and rent at Blockbuster. I had these interactions that were very, very normal for
Mhm.
me. They're not normal anymore. We don't have to talk to the cashier because they're just popping them in the car. We don't have to go and rent our movies because now they're on our streaming service. Building these communication skills are very important. And ultimately, we come back to, how do I want to be remembered? I want to be remembered as somebody who people can easily come up to and talk with, and that they know that they'll have a good experience asking questions. They can be curious. They don't have to know the answer to everything because there's no shame involved. It is simply, "I have a question," or "Let's work on this," or "Yay, my friend's here. My talking coach is here. Let's play." That's what I want to be remembered for. And that to me is having that mindful awareness of, what is this interaction going to look like for me going forward?
That's so crucial because, like you mentioned, in a technology age, it's become very easy for a lot of people to become detached, to lose basic communication skills. I'm not many years behind you, and I remember those days
Mhm.
very clearly, where, but we didn't really have to, yeah, like, those skills were modeled for us by our
Yeah.
parents, but they weren't like trying to push me to go talk to someone because I was
Hmm.
already doing it in many different places.
You were already going to have that experience for sure.
Yes, so that's
Yeah.
really important because the human connection, the personal connection is huge, and it will of course help in the development of speech and intelligence overall. But yeah, none of us really, if we think about it, want to be dependent on bots or conversing with bots.
Mm,
I don't. I think that
good.
that can get really boring. It can get kind of predictable, and so that's kind of where the beauty of being mindful and intentional with our communication is going to come in. And what you're doing is beautiful. I think it's so good that you can help people become more confident in their speech, and from there, just kind of encouraging. I think, yeah, when you're talking about how do I want to be remembered, that's a really important thing to ask ourselves, especially just like, yeah, what kinds of things are going to be written on my tombstone or said at my funeral? Because I do not want it to be she cracked under pressure, she liked to yell, or these
Yeah.
negative things that don't
Yeah.
define us anyway. But yeah, what are those things that can set us apart that help us make positive connections and just grow and make the world a better place overall? So,
I love that.
well, I really appreciate your time today, Lenora. I've learned a
Right back
lot from
at you,
you.
Katie. Right back at you. I had an amazing conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for your time. And I just admire what you're doing because I know I had one friend in college who chose to be a pathologist, a speech pathologist. And I thought, that's really cool because a lot of people look at med school students or dentistry school and think, oh, they're putting in so many years, so they're basically an expert. But then I'm like, well, do you not give that same credence to a speech pathologist? Or sometimes I'm trying to think of
Occupational
another,
therapist.
yeah,
Occupational
occupational
therapist too.
therapist,
Yeah.
yeah, that put in the time, and have that degree of
Yeah.
knowledge and practice. So anyway, I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. I'm excited for this episode to air, and we'll talk soon. I'll reach out to you when I'm ready to post it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Stay well.
You too. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.